Hello everyone, today is December 28th and I thought I would go ahead and give you all of my favorite books from the year 2023. I don't think that I will read another 5-star book in the next week, so I thought it was safe to go ahead and make the video. I will not be telling you about all the books I've rated 5 stars. When I finally went back through all my list of 5-star reads of the year, I didn't agree with my ratings for some of them. Like, I was kind of shocked that I rated them so highly, considering I haven't really thought about them since I've read them. So a lot of the books I'm going to tell you about today are books that I think about pretty regularly, or that I just felt like I could really relate to, or just like things I really enjoyed and I want to recommend to people. I went ahead and copied my Bookstagram reviews and my Goodreads reviews into a notes app just in case I needed some more direction, because some of these books I actually read closer to the beginning and middle of the year, and so I just wanted to make sure that I actually got my points across about each book and why I liked them and like what they were about. So the first book I have to tell you about today is Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. This is my first book of the year this year. It was a great one to start with, and it was my first Franzen actually, and I was obsessed. I loved it so much. So one thing about me is I love a family drama, family saga, all the POVs of everyone in the family. It's one of my favorite things to read. I just think they're so interesting, and I like how invested I get in like all the characters, because when you're reading from different POVs, you really start to like understand why everyone feels and does the things that they do and feel. And I love that feeling. Like, it makes her a really well-rounded, very fleshed out story and like characters, and they never go wrong, you know what I mean? But this book in particular is following a dysfunctional Christian family set in the 1970s in America. The dad is a pastor at his church. His name is Russ. He's married to Marion, who up to this point has led a pretty crazy lifestyle. And when I say up to this point, up to the point that she got married. And so I don't even know if Russ really knows a lot about her past, but a lot of her parts of the story are her kind of doing little flashbacks of like what her crazy home life and crazy life was before she got married to this like ultra super like Christian hippie man. And they had 4 children: Clem, Becky, Perry, and Judson. And they're confronting their relationships with each other, God, and themselves. So it's very reflective and introspective, and I feel like he really got it right that like everybody's POV and like story truly was them worrying so much about themselves and their life and how their choices are going to impact their own futures. I feel like they don't do the best about thinking about how their actions are going to affect their families. Like, you're very much so in their head. How can I make my life better? Like, I feel like everyone in this family is like pretty dang selfish, which makes her like an interesting story, because sometimes I feel like a lot of stories, there's like one main character and everybody's, you know, thoughts and everything are revolving around one person, whereas I feel like all of these people are very introspective and like, how is my life going to change and be affected by all these things around me? And I really liked that. I can't wait to get to another of his books. I picked him up first in the year because it was such a long book, and I figured I'd rather get to spend as much time with it without worrying about like my reading goal. And I think that was a great decision, because I don't know how many other books I read this year that were like super long. Like, I definitely got to some long ones, but this was one of the longer ones, and I'm so happy I started with it. So yes, I loved that one. I cannot wait to read another Jonathan Franzen in the future. I think the next one I want to get to is called The Corrections, I believe, which I think is about another family. The next book I'm going to tell you about is a collection of short stories, and I want to say this is my first Kindle reads of the year, which made it like that much more like memorable and fun. And this book is called Things to Do When You're Goth in the Country by Shavisa Woods. Oh my god, this one made me laugh, giggle, and just kind of like really relate to a lot of our main characters. So every story is following a different character. They're not connected like literally at all, but one of the main like through lines of all the stories is just how all of these main characters live in the rural, like small town type places in America, and how they all feel different or other in any kind of way, you know, whether they are a minority group, they're just like the quiet ones that don't feel like they have any friends, or they feel very like isolated, alone, and kind of like how they spend their time just day to day. But yeah, like I said, a lot of these stories made me laugh a little, like very again, like introspective, but like fun at the same time. I feel like a lot of introspective stories are usually more emotional and like a little bit more serious and like darker, and I feel like these were like dark while also being a bit silly sometimes. So I really enjoyed that collection of short stories. The third book I'm going to tell you about today, I feel like literally everyone has read this, and if you haven't read it, you've read a million reviews on the internet, okay? It's called Ripe by Sarah Rose Etter. It has a beautiful cover. It's the pomegranate. I loved this one. I loved all of these, but I really loved this one. Very relatable. So Cassie is trapped in corporate America at a job she hates. It's in Silicon Valley. She feels very isolated from everyone else in her life. Like she doesn't fit in with her family. She doesn't fit in with people at work. She doesn't fit in with her so-called friends. She feels very alone, and she's in her, I believe her like mid to late 20s, which is my age. So I feel like if you're a corporate girly, late 20s, early 30s, I feel like you could probably honestly relate to a lot of these feelings where you feel like you've done everything like correctly or like the right way, the normal way to get where you want in life, at least the way that everyone always taught you growing up, and you still feel like behind or like different in some way. So I think there's just like a lot of comparison, because I feel like at this age it really feels like a lot of people are feeling very like you're in some like limbo point in your life. Like you're just kind of like stuck in this weird in between of like, you're not necessarily like just graduated, like woohoo, like life is so fun being an adult, but you're not really like at the point, or a lot of people aren't in your like late 20s, where you feel like super comfortable with like who you are, where you are, what you're doing, like the point of your life. I feel like a lot of people haven't found that yet. At least I haven't, and I feel like our main character also hasn't. And so I just found it like very relatable. But anyways, her whole life she has talked about this black hole that has followed her around. I personally think it represents like anxiety, depression. Again, super relatable. It basically plays like a whole like main character kind of in this story, and how it kind of like affects her life and her decisions that she makes. It's just like really good. I wrote that it's vulnerable, funny, and very unsettling, which I feel like is kind of a theme for a lot of these books, where like very dark things, but like people tell it to you in a way that's like kind of like ironic and funny. So yeah, I highly recommend that. Like again, I know a lot of people have probably kind of like brushed it off if you haven't read it already, because you've read 1,000 reviews, but like truly, if you are like a mid to late 20s, early 30s person working like a corporate like job, office desk, laptop job, I really think you can relate to a lot of what she talks about. The next book I'm going to tell you about is called Mrs. S by Kay Patrick. I wrote on my Bookstagram, this was truly perfect. The tension, the desire, all during the heat of summer. Our unnamed narrator is working a year abroad as a chaperone at an all-girls boarding school. Shortly after they start working at the school, they meet Mrs. S, which is the dean, the director. The guy in charge of the school, they meet his wife and become so obsessed with her. They start an affair. It was so good. Like, it was so good. I don't even know how else to explain. You know, I said it's queer, it's introspective, it's beautiful. I highly recommend. Like, the way that the author could describe small things in such a descriptive way. Like, I just haven't read writing like that in such a long time. Like, the writing was so beautiful. And I don't know, I just feel like this year, for whatever reason, was kind of a year of like queer books for me. I feel like I read like more queer literature than I have in like honestly ever, and it was just like really fun and like different, like something new, and I loved it so much. Like, just like reading about their like super like obsessive affair with each other. Like, she just like describes the feelings of like a new love so incredibly well. I really need to read some of the screenshots I screenshotted and like highlighted in the book that I posted to my Bookstagram, and I feel like this doesn't even cover it. Like, I have so many screenshots from this book, like, just so good. So one of them says, she does strike me as the gardening type. I've seen it. I hold on to the image. Her body so picturesque among the flowers, limbs, stems, limbs, an interchangeable elegance. And like, I just like when people write like that, like I can truly imagine exactly like what that was. And like, I love the writing. Like, it was just so descriptive where I could like just see it all like right in front of me. And I think it just made like their love story so much more like just so ingrained in my brain. Like, it was so good. Each movement she makes is positive, whole. This is a body at peace. She thinks of nobody else. And like, it's just, again, like this, our main character is thinking of this lady, Mrs. S, like just so hard. Like, she is just like, cannot stop thinking about her, thinking these like super crazy deep thoughts about this woman that she like honestly kind of barely knows. You know what I mean? It was just so good. I braced myself to feel everything, to be able to re-examine her touch later, to be able to slow it down into some sort of understanding. Impossible. Desire is still only a shape and outline. And I think it's just, yeah, like that longing of like never wanting certain like things or feelings or memories or thoughts to like end. Like, you just want to be able to like hold on to certain things, knowing that you will not be able to, like, no matter what, as time goes on, like your memories will get like warped a little. Like, you'll never really remember things like how they actually happen, or like how you first remember them happening. And no matter how much you like are longing to and like wanting something so bad, you just like, it won't ever stay the same. Oh my god, it's just so good. Okay, like the way she describes popsicles: neon liquid frozen in long plastic tubes, the kind that slices the corners of your mouth as you push and suck. I'm just like, for real, like for real though. Like, I just, the way she like can write, it was just so beautiful. Like, if this author has any more anything out there, I want to read it. If they ever write anything more, I want to read it. And I'm so excited, and I really hope they have something coming out in the next like couple years, because wow. Like, I could see that being honestly my like favorite book of the whole year, I think, maybe. Anyway, this next one actually doesn't come out until 2024. It's a Rachel Khong book. I don't know if anyone read Goodbye Vitamin. It is a beautiful cover. It's like this like bluish, like tealish color, or like these like neon like yellow and orange and pink like lemons on the front. And it was the best book. Like, I loved it. So when I got the arc to this book for her new book, I was so excited. I like could not wait to read it. Anyways, this one is called Real Americans. It's an intergenerational Chinese American novel following multiple family members throughout a period of time. The first section is following Lily, a young woman living in New York in the early 2000s. She's not the closest with her parents. She doesn't feel like they understand a lot about her life. She meets a man named Matthew who ends up being everything her and her family are not. His family owns a huge pharmaceutical company that plays a pivotal role in the story. So our first section is following Lily. Then the next section is following, I can't even really tell you or it'll give like a lot away, but another family member. And then the last section is following Lily's mom. And like I was saying about Crossroads, being able to hear about different family members' backstory, traumatic things that have happened to them, happy things that have happened to them, and how it all can shape your choices and will then impact the rest of your family's life in some way is just like, it's like mind-blowing. It is so good. This book was beautiful. It just told an amazing family story. Like, if you love a story about a family, like different generations, and just how all their lives are like separate but the same, wow, it was beautiful. Like, I cannot recommend that book anymore. Like, it was so good. And then the last book I have to tell you about today is called Couplets by Maggie Milner. A love story in verse and prose vignettes. So they say it's poetry, which, like, yes, but it's poetry that's not super airy. It's very, honestly, like, pretty direct, which I appreciated. I think when I heard people raving about this book earlier in the year, I was like, I don't know, it sounds scary. I feel like poetry scares a lot of just everyday, like, novel readers. And I just, like, wouldn't be scared. And so I have to say, like, it's very direct, and, like, you will understand what's going on. So if that's, like, scaring you off from picking this up, like, definitely don't let it. Couplets portrays the life of a young woman exploring her stifled desires, obsessions, and identity. This is a look into her first queer relationship and how at the end of it all, she's still learning to love herself no matter how much she changes the world around her. So we start out following our main character. She's been in a relationship with this guy for, like, long enough. I don't think, like, a super long time, but, like, long enough. They have, like, a cat, I think, together, an apartment, whatever, they live together. She goes to him one day and is like, hey, I've been thinking about getting with women for quite some time. Like, what are your thoughts? And he is like, for sure, do what you gotta do. And once she starts doing it, he's like, oh, just kidding. No, don't do that. I changed my mind. They break up. She starts hanging out with women pretty regularly. And I think she just, like, learns at the end of it all how big of a romantic she really is, and how much love and desire really and truly impact, like, her life. And kind of, like, no matter who you're in a relationship with or what kinds of things you're exploring, like, what really is important at the end of the day is to, like, love yourself and love your life and go after, like, what you want, and not necessarily what other people want for you. It was beautiful. I loved it. So those are all the books I have to talk to you guys about today. I'm sorry I only had a few to speak about, but I hope that you guys got some good recommendations out of this. It seems like some good love stories and some good family stories is kind of, I would say, the overall theme of my favorite books of the year. Yeah, please let me know some of your favorite books that you read this year, and I'll see you in the next one.